Meeting a new teacher, being away from home, concerns about making new friends, all those things can make students feel stress and pressure when returning to school. Joining me this morning is Dr. Rob Robinson, Clinical Director of Family Care Counseling Associates in Wilbraham, with tips to help relieve the stress. Rob, it's nice to have you here now. This is obviously something, well, I'm in my casual fitness wear. It's Fitness Friday. We're talking about exercising our physical body, but our mental health is very, very important. The transition from summer to school, the school year, can be very, very anxiety provoking.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as the calendar turns to August, we start seeing kids with a lot of anxiety about school. And some of that is really normal, but there are other kids that really lose sleep and have a great deal of difficulty anticipating the new school year. You typically see it when you have elementary kids going into middle schools that involve new buildings. You have middle schoolers going into high school that involve new buildings. You know, middle schoolers are dealing with anxiety about lockers and combinations and all of that stuff. And it really can help if parents can, in those cases where the anxiety is pretty severe, get the child over to the school, take a tour, meet the teacher, practice with the combination lock, and have some rehearsal before they go, because kids will lose sleep over this stuff, believe it or not, before school begins.
You think it's something so simple that would not affect them, but
you
it
know,
does.
in young minds, I mean, there's all kinds of cognitive distortions. They tend to hyper-exaggerate a lot of the things that they're going to experience. They catastrophize a lot, and they can really scare themselves about a lot of those kinds of things.
I remember being a kid, and I remember feeling that way, so
yeah,
absolutely.
It's
and
very real.
Peer stress, of course, the whole social aspect, that can really stress students out.
Yeah, I mean, belonging and being accepted is a huge thing for kids of all ages, you know, from high school on down. And it's really important, especially if kids have had some difficulty with peer relationships the year before, if there were teasing or bullying. You know, parents really need to talk with the kid, develop a plan, how they're going to cope with it, how they're going to deal with it, you know, and have a plan to deal with the school and the teacher if that kind of stuff comes up. But a lot of reassurance is needed from the parents, especially when kids have had some exposure to that kind of stuff the year before. That can be incredibly traumatic and very worrisome at this point.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what grade they're in either.
It doesn't matter at all. It can happen in middle school, high school. I mean, 5th grade on, it gets a little tough. It gets better in high school typically, but all kids can have the potential to be exposed to that.
Of course. Now, it's so important for kids to be involved outside of school, to play sports and go to piano lessons or dance class, but excessive activities can sometimes actually have a negative impact on students.
Yeah, I mean, sports, I think sports are absolutely critical. You know, so sports, dance, any kind of stuff that involves movement for kids, because the impact on the brain physiology is very important. Kids typically do better academically if they're exercising and running around. It's when the sports end that you typically see school performance drop. John Ratey, R-A-T-E-Y, wrote a great book called Spark about exercise and brain physiology. Is worth reading. The problem is that a lot of kids end up playing on 3 or 4 different soccer teams, 3 or 4 different basketball teams. They have CCD classes, there's piano lessons, there's dance lessons on top of all that, and then there's homework. And kids get stressed out having way too much to do. So parents have to try to use discretion, know their child, what they're capable of being able to do, and have the courage to be able to set limits so that they're not overscheduled and not overstressed doing too many things.
And those lessons will carry through into their adult life too.
Absolutely.
As we know, we don't want to put too much on our plate, so it's important to teach that at a young age.
And if they can pick activities where the kids are really running around, it really does make a difference. For years, you know, I was working with kids and thinking that, you know, the sports were contributing to more organization and that's why they were doing better, but it really isn't about that. It's the exercise and the running around that actually helps the mind perform better academically. So if they can pick things where there's a lot of activity and exercise, that really helps a great deal.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Now, the peer stress, as if that wasn't enough, just the social stress, there's also the academic stress too.
Yeah, you know, you know, again, parents know their children, but if they have a child that seems to be struggling a great deal in school and they haven't had the child tested, they don't really have a handle on what's going on academically, it's a great idea to ask the school to do testing or to seek independent testing so that they can identify the proper supports so that the skill level is brought up to meet the challenge with the academic work. When the skill level isn't equal to the academic work, you have a lot of anxiety. potential for depression and a lot of discouragement at school. But with the proper support that's identified through the testing and the game plan developed, kids have a much better chance of being able to feel like they have control over it and to have their self-esteem not impacted negatively by their poor performance. So identifying what's going on with their learning style is really critical at the outset. If parents haven't done that, it's a great idea to get that going in the beginning of the school year.
So parents need to be aware, be involved. And one thing that parents can relate to is the peer stress and the academic stress. A lot of parents cannot relate to the social media issues.
Yeah, social media, you know, the best motto is to adopt the phrase, you know, what goes online stays online. And, you know, these kids are not aware necessarily that they're creating these digital footprints by what they put online. Kids have a lot of anxiety about a couple of things. First of all, kids will say a lot of things about one another online. Other kids have access to that on Facebook and other resources, and it can really discourage kids about their sense of belonging in school. And the other thing is, kids get so taken in by the technology and keeping up to date on Facebook and all these other things that a lot of other things like schoolwork and things fall by the wayside. And then the whole piece gets out of balance. You know, parents sometimes adopt the motto that if the kid's up in the room and they're quiet, everything's going well. That's not a really good thing to do. You got to really be up there monitoring what's being, you know, what they're accessing, what they're saying, and stay on top of that and help the kid make good choices about that kind of stuff.
And just to quickly wrap it up, Dr. Robinson, what should parents do? What's the most important thing that parents can do to make this transition as easy as possible?
You know, I think the best motto to embrace is that, you know, anxiety about transitions is normal, but I think if they can give a great deal of reassurance and get kids into the school before the school year starts, let them check things out, let them meet the teachers, let them have exposure to the things they're going to be dealing with, I think that goes a long way in helping reduce anxiety.
It's great advice.
Yeah,
it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
And now everyone's going to have a smooth transition back to school. Thanks so much, Dr. Robinson.
All right, you're welcome.